Well, greetings, Jonathan Foust here. Welcome. Good to have you here for this webcast. Before we launch, a couple quick thank yous to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington and our producer, Glenn Harrison, for getting this out to you. I'd like to thank Rita Moran, our mindful movement leader. Feel free to check out the link on my Facebook page and on my website for more information about her class preceding this one. I got a newsletter that's available for you if you're interested in resources and stuff like that. This is all offered freely. I've received so much through these practices by other teachers offering it without charge that inspired me to do the same. And if you feel inspired to support me in some way, thank you. I appreciate that. Truly do. This is a great talk from the archives. I mean, great because I really enjoyed putting it together because it explores what actually happens when you practice and you stay with it. This is about seeing into the illusion of a separate self. How, when you practice mindfulness, how does it actually begin to reveal your true nature, who you really are? This very, very simple practice, cultivating present moment awareness, will set you up for insights into seeing how things change, how you relate to it, the interdependence of all things, and the power of awareness and the power of observation without judgment. I hope you enjoy the following meditation and talk. I really did enjoy putting it together, and so many blessings in your practice. So please feel free to stretch, move your body, get the little glitches out of your system. You might want to bring your arms overhead or deepen your breath or open your jaw wide. See if you can invoke the yawn reflex. And then as you're ready, you can close your eyes. If that's comfortable for you, you don't have to. There's something about intentionally turning your attention toward the present moment. So you might ask yourself, what exactly is happening right now? Can you find a word or two to describe the quality of your experience right now? You may notice how whatever you're naming is going to change. And can you just let it be? Now, as a way of deepening present moment awareness, you might like to turn your attention towards softening and relaxing. Beginning with the muscles of the face, we'll explore just a couple areas where we tend to hold tension. Imagine your face like the face of a marble statue. And in particular, you might bring your attention to your jaw. Could you let your jaw just hang from your skull? Just feel that space between the upper teeth, the lower teeth, let that soften open. And if you bring your attention now to the inside of your mouth, what do you feel? What do you notice? In particular, can you feel from the inside the tongue? Can you let your tongue relax? Let your tongue fill your lower jaw and sense if you can track relaxation down through the root of the tongue. And can you feel or imagine the space between your forehead and the back of your head? And can you feel or imagine the space inside the sinus cavities in your head? And can you feel or imagine the space inside your throat? the space inside your lungs. Can you feel or imagine the weight and the volume and the heaviness of your arms? And can you feel or imagine the volume of your hands? The space between your fingers. Can you feel or imagine the space between your navel and your spine? The volume, the heaviness of your legs. The volume of your feet. Can you notice now where you feel the breath on the inside? Is it possible to experience the sound vibrations that are happening right now? And for these next few minutes, you might explore what it's like to cultivate present moment awareness. Using breath or sound, bringing yourself again and again to the direct experience of this breath or these sound vibrations that are happening right now, right here. As many times as your mind may wander, that many times you can reawaken and re-arrive. What's happening now, right now? Can you be with it? And you might sense now what some refer to as taking the seat of the witness. Can you sense who you are as the one who is aware? Relaxing even more, softening even more, and widening your attention to the perception of everything that's changing. Sensing the flow of your experience. What is changing right now? Can you let it be? may notice as you're aware of what's arising and what's passing away that there is this very subtle movement of the mind toward and against. Is it possible to relax back and explore a quality of allowing? Some refer to this stage of meditation as the practice of non-manipulation. And here, if you like, in these remaining minutes, you might let the anchor drop away. Or very lightly touch into your anchor from time to time. And notice what's changing. And if it's possible to simply allow. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to improve. Just simply to relax and let everything be exactly as it is. As you sense the phenomena inside, the breath, sensation, the attitude in the mind right now, and as you sense all the external stimulation, sounds around you, the air against your skin, is there anything right now that could soften or relax or let go? Is there anything you could soften or relax or let go even more than that? You might gently deepen your breath. Just sense how your body might like to move or stretch in any way that feels good. Take this time now for your transition. And welcome back. There's a classic story about the Buddha. It's said that soon after his enlightenment, he was passed by a man on the road who was struck by his extraordinary radiance and the peacefulness of his presence. And the man stopped him and asked, "My friend, what are you? Are you a celestial being or a god?" The Buddha said, "No." He said, "Well then, are you some kind of magician or wizard?" And again, the Buddha said, "No." "Are you a man?" "No." "Well, my friend, then what are you?" And the Buddha said, "I'm awake." That's kind of a cool story, but what does that mean? Oh, awake. Awake to what? Georg Feuerstein is one of the great yoga scholars, talked about this reductionism in yoga. This incredibly sophisticated system of enlightenment has been reduced to stretching your hamstrings in a YMCA or shaping your butt. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm all for shapely derrieres, if that makes you feel good about yourself. But we get these instructions in meditation that can sound kind of reductionist a little bit. They're very, very simple. And when we practice regularly, it's so easily they become rote. But where do these simple instructions actually lead? What are they actually pointing to? And from what I can tell in my potentially distorted view, is they point toward freedom. They point toward happiness. And your experience of freedom and your experience of happiness is directly related to your sense of self, your sense of who you are. There's a great saying, no car problems. No relationship problems. And no self, well, then what? So I'd like to talk about the implications of 4 elements. And again, they're simple. Number 1, cultivating present moment awareness. Okay. Cultivating insights into the nature of impermanence. Number 3, cultivating the recognition of interdependence. And 4th, cultivating non-attachment. Now, if you listen to Dharma talks or you've studied the Dharma, this is not flashy stuff. You've heard it all before. Be present, notice how things change, see how things are connected, and don't be attached. So, you've heard it before. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but maybe there's maybe a deepening remembering. Gil Fronsdal, one of the founders of Spirit Rock, talked about how to listen to a Dharma talk. He said it's like taking a shower. Just kind of let it pour over you. Maybe something will drop in. For me, the most simple things are always the most transformational, and we tend to overlook the simple things. So the first, cultivating present moment awareness. Back in my living in a spiritual community with a vow days, a couple vows, we were visited by lots of really interesting teachers. And one person who came through, his name was Lino Stančić. And he had written a book called Power Eating. An amazing story. And I won't go into the depth of the story. Maybe I'll do a whole talk sometime on mindful eating. But part of his story was about his father, who had been a prisoner of war in World War II. I believe that he was captain of a small ship. They were taken prisoner. And they were given very, very, very little food, like a watery soup and some like old bread. And he and just a few people who he was closest to, they noticed how most of the men, when they got their food, they would just gulp it down. He said, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to drink our solids and we're going to chew our liquids. So whenever they had any like red or anything solid, they would completely chew it until it was absolute liquid. And with the liquid, that they would, really take their time and break it all down. And they were the only ones who survived. And so he kind of developed this recognition, and he had his own experiences, which I can maybe share another time. But he developed this practice of eating where you would chew like 100 times per mouthful. And there was something back, I think it was in the 30s and 40s, called Fletcherism, where you chew 30 times per mouthful, which is a long time. But 100 chews per mouthful is pretty intense. Try it sometime. Number 1, it takes you like 45 minutes to get through like a small bowl. But number 2, everything breaks down in your mouth, and you actually have to kind of keep swallowing because there's a lot of saliva, when you're chewing something. You also recognize when something is like processed, how quickly it disappears in your mouth, and it becomes very kind of unsatisfying. Okay, so I did this for months, and it was kind of a pretty profound breakthrough, because I realized how often when I'm eating, I am completely not present to what's happening. And when I would force myself to chew and count 100 chews per mouthful, it was sometimes, not all the time, this incredible absorption, just this moment, just as it is. If you've ever done a meditation retreat where all the meals are in silence and your meal becomes your meditation, it's quite powerful, just quite powerful. So a little recommendation, try it sometime. Just try chewing 100 times per mouthful. You actually have to tilt your chin forward a little bit because there's so much saliva and you need to swallow a couple times. But what happens is so much of the food gets broken down in your mouth and digestion improves. And there were amazing stories people had of feeling so much more healthy from that practice. But a little Zen Pop quiz here. If you like, you can close your eyes, and if you can't, that's okay. And just take a moment and just sense, well, what is happening right now? Right now, what's happening? And you might imagine yourself as a mountain. You can kind of pick your mountain. It's like a beautiful, craggy mountain. And imagine that you are the mountain. And as the mountain, you are aware of the clouds passing by, different weather systems changing, seasons coming and going, and yet aware. This is a beautiful meditation practice, and we'll come back to it perhaps. But what happens when you practice present moment awareness? Essentially, what happens is you are reducing your identification with the narrative, with your story, and you're fostering this direct experience of reality. And even right now, just take one breath. Can you feel this shift from the narrative to the experience, this breath? When we talk about these mystical moments of awakening, the magic moments, the moments of flow, the moments of being kind of overwhelmed with awe, with grace, one mark of the mystical experience is this sense of the past and future falling away and this unfolding moment kind of arising up. The challenge is, how do you sustain this when it's difficult? As has been said multiple times, enlightenment is an accident, and meditation makes you accident prone. So remembering the present moment is critical. And it's a challenge. It's so gosh darn simple and so challenging. And it's so easy to get caught in self-criticism and self-judgment when we realize that we've been gone. And I find it really helpful for myself, not all the time, but sometimes. That moment of waking up is such an important part of the meditation practice. When you realize your mind is just completely gone, there are really two options. You can chastise yourself for forgetting the present moment, or you can celebrate. Mild celebration. You're back. You just woke up. And the interesting thing is, when you have that sense of you just woke up, look for the pleasure in coming back. Relax. Relax your face. Relax your palms. relax your tongue, the inside of your mouth, and look for the pleasure in re-arriving. And there's a really beautiful kind of reprogramming process that can happen through your nervous system. To have waking up be a moment of pleasure. So in that moment of waking up, then the question is, well, what did you just wake up to? What exactly is it that you are awake to? And this leads to the second element, which is part of recognizing the nature of reality, which is this sense of change or impermanence. I have a very distinct memory from when I was about maybe 8 or 9 years old. My grandfather had just died. My family had been camping in Maine. We would go like 4 miles up a lake to this camping site. And when we came back to civilization, I remember my father having a message, making a phone call, and coming back really grim and really quiet. And I was told that my grandfather had died. I grew up on a farm, so I was around death a lot, but we never really talked about it. And on the farm, we had about 5 acres of lawn, and it was one of my jobs was to mow it, which was kind of a full-time job through the summer. And I was mowing in the orchard, and I was thinking about death. You know, my grandfather had just died. I was aware other people in my family had died. And I thought to myself, does everyone die? And I thought, well, does that mean that I'm going to die? And I remember very distinctly driving this little Cub Cadet lawnmower around, thinking to myself, I'm going to find a way out of this. And I promptly pushed it away. And of course, the experience of death came back to visit multiple times since then. But here's the thing, the more I let it in, the more I began to recognize change. And the more I began to recognize impermanence as a fundamental characteristic of reality. We are all touched by death. And we all have this magic ability to forget about it. But the question is, what happens when we remember it? What happens when we really get it, that all phenomena are transient and subject to change? This is a doorway to reality. And again, it's so gosh darn simple, and we forget. So a short little Zen pop quiz once again. If you like, you can close your eyes, or you don't have to. But bring your attention, if you would, to the sounds that are happening around you right now. Sound as an anchor is an extraordinary way to practice. Notice the sounds the closest to you, the sounds that are just at the furthest edge of your capacity to hear. As I often like to point out in sound meditation, that there are 2 ways that we perceive. One is through the linear rational mind, and the mind will very naturally identify the source, give it a name, and determine whether it's a threat. Another way of perceiving sound is what's referred to as bare attention. That is, experiencing the sound vibrations without a story. And you might explore just for the next 30 seconds, is it possible to simply feel the sound vibrations without adding a story from the mind? What happens when you bring your attention to the direct experience of the sound vibrations? And you'll notice now how the sound vibrations are beyond your control. And you may notice too how they're changing beyond your control and changing of their own accord. Now, is it possible to expand this awareness of what's changing and what's beyond your control to your thoughts? To any emotional content, and maybe even to any states of mind? And what if for the next minute you extended this out to everything in your experience, acknowledging it as changing and beyond your control? And one final question in this short inquiry. Can you locate what it is that is aware of all of this? If you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. I've always loved the image of a small child in one of those grocery carts in the supermarket. And there's some of those grocery carts that have little steering wheels. And you see little kids thinking that they're steering the cart as they move through the grocery store. That's us. We think we're in control. And when we really start to pay attention to our experience, so much is happening. It's just happening. Can you choose the next thought you're going to have? So if we really embrace impermanence as a factor of reality, well, what happens? What happens when you remember that everything is changing? That anything born out of causes and conditions is subject to change? Well, what happens over time is there's this weakening attachment to this idea of a fixed, separate self. And there's a greater appreciation of the flow. There's less clinging. And it's very practical. When things aren't going your way, when you are down, feeling beaten up by life, when you remember that this is going to change, there can be a great sense of relief. When you think you have it all figured out, when you're on top of it, it's definitely going to change. And remembering that can be so powerful. So there's this awareness of the relative and the absolute. When you remember on a relative level that things are going to change, there can be a greater sense of ease. It's easier to let things go. When you remember on an absolute level that things are going to change, there can be a quality of disorientation, a quality of disquiet, because where are you? Where's the self in all of this? Some of my most terrifying experiences have been in this exploration. These practices are not for the faint of heart. They've taken me personally to profound edges. If everything is going to fall away, as the Buddha said, nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. There's an annihilation of this sense of the separate self, which can be both wonderful and expansive and really, really disorienting and terrifying. The moments of flow, when you lose yourself in intimacy, when you lose yourself in present moment experience, there's a sense of joy. And when we really explore the extinguishing, the fact that everyone you know and love is going to disappear, in no particular order, that takes a strong keel in the water. So the next element to keep in mind is the recognition of interdependence. And this is a really interesting one. In my mongrel family history, one branch of my family came from Yorkshire in Great Britain during a famine there. And my I don't know how many great-grandfather, bought 300 acres in the wilderness of northern Pennsylvania, and he set about setting up a farm. He built a flour mill, a hardware store, and there's a whole clan up there in northern Pennsylvania. And the word is that there was one branch of the clan that was known for being really tall and really skinny and really long-lived. The joke was that they would have to nail them in their coffins. They would get so old. When I was 16, I met a great-great-uncle. He was referred to as Long John, Long John Lewis. And we stood there. He was 86, I was 16. Same height, same color eyes, and even the same kind of temperament. It was a very powerful experience for me, looking into a mirror with 60 years ahead of me. And this recognition that I'm not unique, that there's this interconnection in life. So there's a very interesting concept that illustrates this. You may be familiar with it, but it's extraordinary. It's referred to as Indra's net. And if you like, you can close your eyes again or not. But imagine, if you would, this vast net, or this huge, like, spider web that extends out infinitely in all directions. And at each intersection of the web, there is a jewel or a mirror that reflects every other jewel or mirror in the net. Each reflection contains the image of every other reflection. And there's this sense of how everything is interconnected and interdependent. And just imagine for a moment that every individual part of the universe contains and reflects the whole, and the whole is present in each part. So when we explore the self, there can be this sense, or maybe even a realization, that the self is not isolated, but in relationship to everything else. Thoughts, emotions, actions are conditioned from external and internal factors. That you are interconnected with everything in the universe. So you might like to Deepen your breath. Feel like you can open your eyes. So there are three elements here in this recognition of interdependence. No entity exists independently. Everything is interconnected and affects everything else. The second is what's referred to as not self, or anatta in Pali. And this is that your individual identity is an illusion. You're actually part of a greater whole. And the third is this sense of infinite reflection, that every action or every event ripples throughout existence. Okay, so what does this mean? When we sense the illusion of this rigid, independent self, what happens? One possibility is there's a greater sense of interconnectedness, and with it comes compassion and a sense of openness. When there's this recognition that you, whoever you take yourself to be, is connected to all things, something interesting happens. In fact, right now, if you just take a look at your right hand. If you look closely at your right hand, you might see the hand of your mother or father. You might recognize the hands of your grandparents, great-grandparents. Your connection to the past come living through you right now. And again, when you look at your hand, this inheritance of this body that you're in right now, where are you in all of this? And can you just sense for a moment the illusion of a permanent self? So the final thing I'd like to share about these mindfulness practices and how they relate to the recognition of the illusion of a self has to do with non-attachment. You may have noticed every now and then you get attached to the results of your actions. I was once in a conversation with a young man, and he was struggling in relationships. Really liked this guy a lot. He was sweet, he was bright, he was kind, had a really good sense of humor. But whenever he spent time with anyone he was romantically interested in, though, he completely shut down. He was deeply self-conscious, got paralyzed, kind of locked in anxiety. And he was listening to a talk I gave a long time ago, back when I was talking about my celibacy vow. Back when I was in my celibacy vow, we were always looking for inspiration. And I remember my guru's guru said that to think of the opposite sex, this only works when you have a particular inclination, heterosexual inclination. Think of the opposite sex as either your sister or your mother. It has a way of kind of neutralizing the charge, if you will. And that became a very, very helpful element for me as I was kind of interacting with the opposite sex. Can I feel this person as either my mother or my sister? And he told me how he started to approach this whole idea of being with someone through this lens. And he noticed that his attachment to romance, when it fell away, allowed him to be much more himself. And he noticed that he started developing more friendships with women. And he also noticed that the more he relaxed and he sort of trusted this reframing, that he was feeling a lot more joy and just sharing the moment with people. And I just love that story because it's a direct result of letting go of the attachment to our actions. Letting go of the need to make things happen. Letting things come and go without clinging. The result of non-attachment is we're more free from our habitual patterns, and that supports liberation. This example of letting go of attachment around dating is maybe a little trivial, but I think it illustrates the nature of the mind. Whenever there's a separate conditioned self trying to make something happen, inevitably there's some form of stress. And where there is stress, as the teacher Ajahn Chah famously said, it's like having rope burn. The more you hold on to the rope, the more you're going to burn. When you let go of the rope, there's a great possibility of freedom. So then the question becomes, can you imagine who you are completely absorbed in the present moment, not concerned by past or future? Can you imagine who you are letting everything change by itself? Can you imagine who you are remembering how everything is interdependent? And can you imagine who you are unattached to the outcome of your actions? As they say in yoga, to renounce the fruit of your actions. And it brings up a deeper question, which is enlightenment a permanent state, or is it a state of glimpses? In my experience, it's glimpses. We have these tiny fragments of moments of not being attached, of sensing the mystery of interconnection, being absorbed in the present moment. And my feeling is we have more and more and more of those moments that begin to string themselves together. The other question that comes up, and I'm going to take just another minute or two for this, is this sense of seeing into the illusion of self. Does it mean that we move away from the world? And I love this quote, and we're going to end with this. This quote from Dogen Zenji. Enlightenment is intimacy with all things. Enlightenment is intimacy with all things. This is a very deep, direct connection with life in all its forms. It's actually not withdrawing from the world, it's engaged with the world. So you might close your eyes just for a short reflection. As you sense the breath right now. Take a few moments and just sense your capacity to be present, suspended between the future and the past. Remembering that everything changes. Everything changes. Imagining for a moment this image of Indra's net. In this juncture, in this spider web of being, that every juncture reflects back the whole. And that who you are as this separate self is connected to everything and anything. And sensing your capacity for non-attachment. to be awake to the here and now, just as it is. Enlightenment is intimacy with all things. Closing with these following questions. As you feel this breath, as you sense yourself mid-step, what is the most important thing in your life right now? What is the most important thing in your life right now? Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you found this helpful in some way. May your journey be filled with the joy of discovery, and may your capacity for happiness, freedom, creativity, expression continue to widen and deepen. Happy trails.